Good evening. I'm Councillor Maureen Cleater, the Chairman of the Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee. Please let there be a shorter name than that in future. And I'm pleased to welcome you all to this meeting. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know this if this will be happening. I don't see any budding Cecil B. DeMills, so I will take it that it's just going out on the YouTube channel. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Just to let you know, there has been a change in the running order, and we'll now be taking items as follows. The item 12, consideration to administer a CPO on behalf of Golden Homes. Then item 10, member agenda item, requests for dirt bikes, quad bikes and mini motorcycles. Item 11, fourth quarter financial update and performance monitoring report. And then item 13, property acquisition for the council house building programme. So please note that. And obviously, if colleagues from Golden Homes want to stay for the whole agenda, you're more than welcome to, but I suspect you've got a home to go to. So, apologies. Do we have any apologies? Apologies I've received so far are Councillor Kadaka, Millen and Parfitt. Any other apologies? No. Thank you. And can we have the names of substitute members, please? Councillor Keeley. Councillor Keeley for Councillor Millen. Thank you. Councillor Conyard.
Councillor Conyard for Councillor Kadka.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Reardon for Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Thank you. Urgent items. I am unaware that there are any urgent items. Notification of visiting members, please.
Councillor Joanna Wilkinson for item 10.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dan Wilkinson, item 10.
Disclosures by members and officers.
Yes, with regards to item 12 regarding Golden Homes, just need to declare that I'm actually a Golden tenant, although I'm not affected by the discussion this evening.
And just for transparency, in terms of item 12 and item 10, I'm a ward member for the area concerned.
Chair, if I may add, I'm also a ward councillor for the area affected by item 10.
Item 6, any disclosures of lobbying? Item 7, to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that all items be taken in public. However, if members wish to discuss the information contained within the exempt appendices to item 13, Council House Building Programme, it will be necessary to move into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8, the very long minutes of the previous meeting. Do we agree the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of May? Thank you. Item 9, forward plan relating to the committee's terms of reference. Are there any comments on the forward plan, or do the Cabinet members wish to make any comments? Yes, Councillor Wales.
Just to say that the things relating to my portfolio are on the agenda tonight anyway, so they've come up rather quickly.
Unfortunately for you. No, and it's good that things are moving quickly. So thank you very much, Councillor Wales. So we now move to the agenda item. Sorry. I move that the forward plan be noted and agreed. Is that agreed? This is where I should have brought my highlighting pen with me, so the things I need to say stand out, but hey. So now we have item 12, which is consideration to administer a CPO on behalf of Golding Homes, to be introduced by Councillor Wales, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, and also present we have Katie Exon, the Head of Property and Leisure, and Lenka Muir, the Assistant Director of Development, the Visiting Officer from Golding Homes. I don't have any visiting members who wish to speak on this item, so over to you, Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce this item. So the compulsory purchase order is not a power available to a housing association, but is a tool that local authority may have need to use to enable, amongst other things, significant redevelopment to take place. And I'm sure you're aware of that. Tonight's report is a consideration of whether to recommend the use of the CPO power in favour of the new development at Shepway. However, it is not the end of the process. As I should say, I also live on Shepway, but not in that area. We will all have in mind that we're considering an intervention that involves somebody's home and should only be exercised when there is a compelling reason to do so, when all other options are exhausted. The provision of good quality affordable homes has always had unanimous support from members and remains a key priority of our strategic plan and housing strategy, carrying on the work that was undertaken by the previous administration. One of the main drivers for the stock transfer in 2004 to Golding's Homes was to enable the investment in accommodation that was no longer fit for purpose. This began with the Y blocks in Parkwood, and the Shepway regeneration is another example of this. While we appreciate that these are people's homes, the reality is that the accommodation does not meet with the standards we aspire to for our residents and would need significant and continuous investment to maintain it to a decent home standard. A more purposeful proposition is the demolition of the existing 114 properties and replacing these with an increased number of 236 new homes. Not only does this provide homes that are more sustainable, better for the environment, and whose running costs will be easier for residents to manage, it also makes better use of a brownfield land site at a time when the need for additional housing has never been more compelling, with increasing numbers of families having to be placed in temporary accommodation. So that's the case for regeneration. It's quite compelling. The regeneration has taken quite some time to reach this point, and consultations have taken place with the affected residents and ward councillors I know have been involved. And we have supported Golding Homes in the decanting of their tenants to enable a managed transition to achieve the vacant possession of the site. At present, there are 6 properties, which is only 5 leaseholders, because one family owned 2 properties, who remain negotiating with Golding Homes and have yet to accept the settlement which has been made to them to leave their accommodation. Of those remaining 5, 3 of them are sublet to tenants, and 2 are engaging with Goldings and just need a little bit more of a push to get them over the line. There is 1 remaining tenant. Indeed, and one of the properties is actually boarded up, but they are still sticking their heels in about selling. Indeed, for the whole project to remain viable, there's a timescale that must be achieved. In order to preserve the deliverability of the regeneration and to create these homes, these new homes, Golding Homes has requested that the council assists in a situation whereby, if all other measures fail, to result in vacant possession of the site, then the council will use its CPO powers to achieve that aim. And I would draw you to the section on risks in the report if you haven't already. I'm sure you have already seen that. So after careful consideration of the request, I'm minded to support the proposal to use the CPO to ensure the regeneration of the new housing. But I'm here to listen to the advice from the members of the PAC before I make that final decision. I would say that Golding Homes have been negotiating for quite some time. Their deadline is the result of needing funding, or part of the funding is coming from Homes England. And if we don't make that timetable, then the whole of the redevelopment would be in jeopardy. And none of us wants that. We need to get these homes built. We need to get more homes for our residents, take them off the list. Okay, thank you very much. I would be interested to hear the debate.
Yep, Councillor Fort.
I want to pick up something you just said. Those residents or those properties that haven't arranged or are still not willing to sell or whatever, those tenants or those owners, is this their main residence, or as you just said, they are subletting? Because my concern is, if it's someone's home and they're living there and we're offering them something like 150,000, there's no way they're going to purchase anything within the borough for that amount of money. But if they are subletting, so it's not their main residence, I'm a little bit more happy.
Yes, I had the same reaction as you did when I heard that. If they are subletting, then they have no real need to carry on owning the property, really. That money will come back into them, and they will have an opportunity to use that wherever they wish. Of the 6, there is one, I believe, whose residence it is, but he is one of the ones who is negotiating with the council, so he's already in conversation with us. Of the difficult ones, it's none of the ones who actually live there. Yes, they're all commercial ventures, and one of them is actually boarded up and empty and still won't negotiate.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Dawes.
I was wondering, because out of the crescents, one half is already boarded up and works is starting. So are we talking about those vacancy not being cleared from the second half of the crescents? Okay. Is it at all possible are they asking to be moved from their property back into the crescents when it gets refurbished, rebuilt, or what are they saying? And how long have you been negotiating with them? That's what my 2 questions.
Good evening. Just to introduce myself, I'm Lenka Mira. I'm the Assistant Director of Development for Golding Homes. So to answer that question, the leaseholders that we still need to negotiate and bring to the table are in phases 2 and 3. So there's the part of the site which is still in situ, hasn't been demolished. And they are leaseholders. So basically the purpose of that is to purchase the property back from them, pay them money to transfer the ownership back to us so that we can demolish. They may have the opportunity to purchase again back into the scheme when it's completed, because we have a good provision of shared ownership properties. By the time the scheme is finished, we'll be providing 64 shared ownership properties. So that will be plenty of opportunity for them to come back as leaseholders. But there isn't the same security, if you like, in regards to that as we offer to, for example, the social rented residents, which are being decanted with council support. They have the option to return into a social rented property in the scheme when it's completed. For leaseholders, it's different. we purchase back and the ownership transfers in full to us.
Councillor Wilby.
You mentioned Homes England are investing in this, and you mentioned the time frame. What is the cut-off point for you to actually get the CPOs over the line, or the negotiations agreed before you lose that funding?
So we currently agreed phase 1 funding, which is for completion by March 2026. The new funding is being released, and that is the one that's concerning us for phases 2 and 3. They should be for completion in financial year 26-27. So in order to meet our commitment deadlines, we need to make a meaningful start on site in financial year 25-26. So basically in about 12 months' time. Based on the advice that we've been given previously, the CPO process, if it carries on in full, it could be 12-18 months onwards. So really the time pressure is on to bring that forward simultaneously. But I'd like to stress that our initial stance and what we try to do is obviously come to agreement without that process being fully evoked. But it is a good negotiating tool. For phase 1, which is the phase that has been demolished now, we had only one leaseholder there, and effectively the negotiation with them had taken so long that it's almost put the whole project in jeopardy. And it's a learning point from that, which is why we're asking council for support with this process. Thank you.
Councillor Keeley, then Councillor Rodwell.
Thank you. I was reading about the what you're proposing, offering the tenant, the leaseholders. Is what does concern me is the £150,000. Is that what they can actually buy the same property for? As we're bearing in mind that to buy it elsewhere outside of that area may put the costs up. I'm sure you've worked all that out, but also are they getting? It says 10% of a loss payment. Does that cover redecorating? I don't know about these things. So does it cover all the costs of those? And if they've got to move somewhere where they can't get what they've got for £170,000, where do they go if they want to buy back into a shared ownership in the future? I presume they would probably want to. If that was me, I'm trying to think. If it was me, I would want to go somewhere and have that as my own again. But if they chose to do that, as you suggested, what's the plans for that, please?
Sure. So just a couple of points. So the process for the actual negotiation and agreeing the value of the property is that there are 3 market valuations carried out at the property that we're trying to purchase. 2 of those are carried out by Golding Homes, and 1 additional is carried out or commissioned by the person that is selling. But we obviously pay for the cost of that. The highest value out of the 3, when the valuations come back, is the starting point of the negotiation. We go from there, so they get the highest available value on the market for that home. It's been nudged up quite significantly. We've had in those 3 valuations, for example, we see differences up to £25,000 between the 3, and obviously we take the highest one. Then there is an additional 10% of that value on top of that as a statutory. We also pay any surveying costs, including surveying costs on the replacement property that they will be buying. Also stamp duty up to an agreed value. We pay all the removal costs, including packing materials, and provide support throughout. We pay their legal fees also. So it's quite a comprehensive package. We have completed 3 buybacks in total to date, and this package has been agreed, and actually each one had been slightly different to tweak to their circumstances. We are in good, we've made good headway with the ones that are remaining, except for the 2 that have been mentioned previously. Neither of the 2 are actually resident in their property, so they already have a home that they live in. They're not going to be, or if they are buying another property, it would be another sublet, presumably. So for the ones that actually are the highest risk for us, and the ones that the CPO would form, I suppose, a useful tool, those wouldn't fall into that category. I suppose everybody else had been able to resettle elsewhere, and the package had served well in that process.
Just to come back on that, and if there was a CPO was put in place, would the terms be as favourable for those leaseholders as the one you're offering?
Yeah, so the starting point, which is the highest value and 10%, and the package that I mentioned, that is a statutory plus everything else that Golden House wanted to put on top, and that is already in excess of what's a statutory requirement, and that remains unchanged. That we also will try to settle outside of the CPO process. So we are encouraging people to come to the table and negotiate with us. For example, we have been able to offer a property from our portfolio and offer it as an equity share, and basically bought back another property and swapped the property effectively to resettle a person. So that's worked. That's not written in statute anywhere, but it's something that we saw a need. We saw that we've got the tools that we could work with and found something that really worked for that person in question. Thank you.
Councillor Rodwell.
Between your questions and answers, you practically answered everything I was going to say. What I'm hearing is that you tailor make the provision according to the individuals, because that was concerning me. Obviously, these are people's homes and their circumstances are very, very different. Would you say that the ones that you have considered successful, has it been from the last owner's perspective, has it been a successful outcome for them? Would they say that they were happy with that?
Okay, thank you. At the risk of putting words in people's mouths, I suppose, they have only signed and agreed the buyback with us when they were happy, and it had taken a significant amount of negotiation, making sure that we understand their needs and create a package that was suitable and allowed them to move on from the property. So I think on the whole grounds that actually had gone through, I would say that we have agreed, and the package was suitable and they are happy in their new homes.
Thank you. I think I should imagine it's an incredibly stressful situation for anyone to be in, and it's good to hear that the outcomes were favourable and felt favourable for the individuals concerned.
If I can just come back on that, I absolutely appreciate that. And we have held a number of information evenings. We provide newsletters. We also have a regular presence at the Shetway Hub, where people are able to drop in and ask any questions. We have a dedicated coordinator that deals with all resettlements and decants for the social rented residents there as well. She is well known and attends and in person deals with all of these inquiries. So effectively there is 24/7 support if people are worried. But what we have found actually is that so far residents that are moving away from the scheme, that are looking forward to that area being regenerated. And I think that goes even, when planning was being considered, it had quite a lot of support from local people. But of course, this is a slightly different question, actually buying back someone's property and ownership. So we need to obviously up the stakes slightly and provide them with a suitable package to be able to depart from their property and for us to be able to regenerate.
Last thing, sorry to hog the microphone. Do people generally stay within the area or do they move away from the area? I'm thinking if there were families with children, did they decide to stay?
Yes, generally they stay in the area, and also that some of the people that from the social rented side are really looking forward to returning, which they have the option there to come back. So we've actually invested or are investing in a social value sort of package, engaging local schools, engaging local residents, trying to re-establish the community when the scheme is complete, to try to bring that community back, and having our residents return, those that had been there previously, I think is a very crucial part of that. And we want to be working with them to support a new thriving community with a good mixture of, tenures and social mobility and so on.
Because, it's, as you
Sorry,
say,
Councillor Rodwell,
is that
it's
it?
not a conversation.
Sorry.
We need to move on.
I might grab you afterwards.
But please feel free to contact them later to discuss that. Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Chair. If this is approved by council, by the cabinet, will Golding Homes provide feedback on the outcome of the remaining properties?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. What we're looking to do is, with your support, start the CPO process, but actually, our absolute aim is to settle with everyone outside of that process. So we'll be in continuous conversation with the council, and we rely on council officers' support as well through the process, because it's driven by the council, undersigned by Golding Homes, and the finances are covered by Golding Homes, but it's driven by the council. So we will be absolutely in constant contact, and we're hoping that although the CPO gets issued to all residents, we can take them off the list pretty quickly and just have those two high risk that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you very much, because that was a really good discussion and debate around that. And as a ward councillor, I just would like to say that actually Golding Homes have engaged pretty well on this issue and a number of others. If you turn to page 38, you have the recommendations. Now, from what I have seen and heard, I think what we're looking at is voting for something that we hope will never have to be used, which is, just to focus people's minds to say, and again, as is outlined in it, the recommendations are that subject to Golding Homes indemnifying the council for all associated costs, the council utilises its CPO, compulsory purchase order, for those that who may be watching, our millions of viewers, as outlined in the report, thus enabling the redevelopment of Cambridge Crescent to proceed, and that 2, authority is delegated to the Director of Finance, Resources and Business Improvement to commission professional services to carry out all other necessary steps to enable the compulsory purchase order powers to be exercised. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Wilby. Seconded, Councillor Conyard. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 10, which is a member agenda item request on dirt bikes, quad bikes, mini motorbikes, and that will be introduced by Councillor Joanna Wilkinson, and Councillor David Nagy may speak on this as a cabinet member for community, cohesion and safety, and we also have Martin James, community and strategic partnerships manager, present. Do we have Yes, thank you. I was just checking because we've not done this before with Councillor Joanna Wilkinson will speak first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My fellow councillors and I receive regular complaints about quad bikes and mini motorbikes causing antisocial behaviour. We have had reports of motorbikes charging through the streets and even onto the pavements, creating a nuisance for local residents and posing a significant safety risk. This year in particular, this behaviour has increased to such an extent it feels like it's reached a breaking point. In Shepway, one particular individual frequently rides a quad bike up and down Northumberland Road, revving the engine and performing stunts such as wheelies and standing on one leg, causing a daily disturbance. About 6 months ago, the police confiscated his bike for about a week, but it was returned to him and he continues his antisocial behaviour around Shepway without any consequences. In the previous ward that I worked in, residents near the Mangrove Recreation Ground have also reported mini motorbikes tearing up and down the park, causing a nuisance to children and damaging the football pitch. An elderly lady living nearby has been targeted for complaining about these bikes. Given these issues, my ward colleagues and I propose introducing public space protection orders to impose on the spot fines of £100 for the types of antisocial behaviour plaguing our communities. Similar measures have been successfully implemented in areas like Manchester City Council, St Helens, Sandwell and Bradford, where there was a significant decrease in complaints following the enforcement of PSPOs. Public awareness is crucial for the effectiveness of PSPOs. Ensuring that the community is informed about the PSPOs and the consequences of breaching them is essential. It is important to act on this proposal. Doing nothing will only encourage continued antisocial behaviour without any consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Do you want to come in now, Martin, or do you want to answer questions later? Yeah, I've just checked. So if you want to wait till after Councillor Daniel Wilkinson has spoken, I'm happy for you to deal with questions then. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think you two should have double-barreled your name or something, Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. So not a great deal to add other than some residents in parts of my ward that I represent have become so frustrated with the situation that they've threatened to take the law into their own hands. Unfortunately, this hasn't happened yet, but it's just illustrative of kind of the level of anger that this is stirring up. Concerns have been raised about potentially criminalising young people under 18s. I sympathise with this position because nobody wants to saddle a young person with something that's going to disadvantage them in later life for behaving antisocially when they're a child. But a criminal record would only be incurred if the fine isn't paid and the case goes to court. Further to this, we've caught parents in the act of facilitating this behaviour. At some point, parents do have to take a share of responsibility. We've mentioned about an information campaign, so it would benefit all councillors whose wards are affected by this behaviour to help raise public awareness through their channels. Under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014, both police officers and council officers have the authority to enforce PSPOs. So with appropriate signage and messaging, we hope that this PSPO would deter those who disregard the safety and well-being of other residents. Thank you.
Does either the officer or the cabinet member wish to respond? Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I've been working with Martin on this one, and it is a very complicated situation. We don't want to criminalise anyone, but when things are starting to get out of control, some action has to be taken. And this is why I'm going to leave it to Martin, because he's working quite a lot on this, and he can give us an update, which will be very detailed, and I'll come back later.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy.
Nobody on YouTube wants to hear me anyway. So I'll start again. I won't start again. Anyway, I'm more than happy to bring a report back to the committee, obviously, as is members' rights. We do, however, need to collate the evidence. I can give you a sample of what we've been doing with the police recently. So since January, between January and March, the police seized 10 off-road bikes. And in April, a specific operation which utilised specialist county police resources issued 12 seizure and protection notice warnings and seized a further 3 bikes. This was all published through their My Community Voice service. The recommendation I would make would be that we have a ward cluster meeting in September. We wouldn't be able to bring a full report until October anyway, due to practicalities of delivering evidence. We can go through the proposal with the ward councillors for that area at the time, and come up with a reworked version and then bring that back to committee if that was deemed necessary.
Do we have any other speakers? Councillor Reardon and then Councillor Ford. No, you have. Sorry, you have a right to reply, Councillor Wilkinson, once all the debate and everything's happened. So Councillor Reardon, Councillor Ford, and then Councillor Wilby.
Thank you, Chair. I realise this may make it more complex. I'm completely in support of this, by the way. In our ward, we've had a lot of situations on public open fields, children's play areas, football fields, and nature parks, people using motorcycles and different things. Would you be able to cover horses and traps within this item? Would that be able to be included in it?
There again, I think there are already offences under the Road Traffic Act, but we can also use our community protection powers. We wouldn't specifically need an on-the-spot PSPO to replicate powers we already have.
Yeah, just to say that we've had a lot of those instances in Stapler across the board with the items issued on here and horses and traps. Thank you very much.
I think I should clarify, sorry, when I say we, I'm talking about the partnership. I don't have road traffic offence powers, the police colleagues do.
Councillor Ford.
Yeah, my ward suffers with this antisocial behaviour, quad bikes on playing fields and causing havoc. So I'm, very supportive of it. Just on the spot fines, so the police can obviously issue a fine. Are we saying Maidstone staff can issue a fine, on the spot fine? And I mean, when this is carried out, there's not always a policeman, or it could be out of hours for Maidstone. Would there be some sort of reporting database or a phone number that people would ring? Because you need to get someone there fairly quickly.
I think this all comes down to what I'm trying to convey around the practicality of how difficult this piece of work is and how a public space protection order wouldn't necessarily arm us further to what we already have in terms of the statute. A lot of the work we do around quad bikes and off-road bikes is done retrospectively. One of the things that's probably worth noting is that during the last year and a half, the police have been undertaking a huge restructure of their staff and are currently a good way towards being 100% staff. They are looking at being fully staffed by September. Now, in that new model, we have beat officers that will work within your communities. They replace the PCSOs, two in the acronyms in our world, police community support officers. So effectively, what the police model does is it's placed warranted police officers with the ability to stop people, which PCSOs didn't have, into your wards. Now, obviously, there isn't enough beat officers to have a beat officer per ward, but they work in teams. What the police would also like me to say is that sitting alongside those is what we refer to as our neighbourhood task forces, which are multi-agency problem-solving task forces, which we would use to deal with this within the Shepway Park Woodman Gravitt area initially, and then look to roll it out as a model further. Is we can pull upon that additional resource as well as county resource, because the specialist bike unit doesn't sit within the community safety unit. That would be a county provision. So even the ability to stop these bikes, and if you've seen when the police turn up, everybody knows what happens. And the reality is, doesn't matter whether it was my officers, the police officers, or a KCC warden, they're not stopping. So an on-the-spot fine isn't practical. So everything we do, whether it's a PSPO or a community protection notice, would be done retrospectively using intelligence gathered from local residents. And with the advent of Ring doorbells, better CCTV on shop fronts, etc., we have more chance of gathering that intelligence.
Again, I fully support this. I've had many of issue in my ward, and come up to summer, and I will probably get about 4 or 5 phone calls a month about the dirt bikes on South Park and on Hell Park. And I've been accosted by parents and called the police, and nothing gets done at all. You mentioned about the new beat officers. Our beat officer for our ward covers Bournemouth, Chelsea, Ledham, Staplehurst. It's huge. No way he's going to be able to police it. I'm not saying these fines will make a difference, but there may be a deterrent. So I'm fully for supporting it. I don't even think £100 enough. I think it should be more, to be honest. You've mentioned about the community protection areas. Don't we already have them on our parks already?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You said about the community protection orders about putting them down. Don't we already have them on our park areas already? Don't we already have them on our park areas already?
Yeah. So the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act gave us a range of powers. We have public space protection orders in place for dog control, which does enable my officers to stop individuals walking their dogs if they've committed an offence under those acts. We also have a PSPO in place for the town centre in relation to antisocial drinking, which gives police the powers to remove alcohol and to exclude a person from an area for a period of time, and also enables us and the police to work with people undertaking the acts that support begging, not the act of begging itself. It's important I clarify that. So we have PSPOs, but we also have the community protection notices power, and we are amongst the most effective councils in Kent to use community protection powers, and probably in terms of our peer group, the other local authorities we're comparable to, above them as well. In terms of the beat officer point, I take that point absolutely, but as I said, they've just gone through a restructure and the policing numbers are increasing. And as I said, the neighbourhood task force is the additional resource that beat officer would call upon in order to support this, rather than deal with it on their own because it's too big for one beat officer. So your point is absolutely valid. One beat officer wouldn't deal with this, but there is a community safety unit team of police officers that would work on this with my officers and Golding Homes, etc., in terms of tenancies, etc.
Yeah, you mentioned about gathering evidence. For example, I'll use South Park because it's in my ward. You said about using Ring doorbell, but by the time they're at the park, they could just be pushing that bike. We took away all the CCTV within the car, within the parks, and some of the areas, to tell you the truth, that we're talking about because of budgetary issues. How do you propose that we gather that evidence? Because in the past, it's me giving witness testimony to the police officer, which then makes me a target by these parents. I've just said that it costed us. So you're putting a lot on the ward councillors and people to actually not say, I'm going to say pass up, but actually to report these issues. And there's very little protection then after that for those people that report these antisocial issues. I'd also say, you said there's no facilities. You can just go on Google Maps, quickly put in dirt bike. There's 3 within our ward that you can go to. There's 2 on the way down to Leeds Castle, for example, that you can actually privately hire. We do have facilities within our borough. People just choose not to use them. I don't buy this. It's a rite of passage. We're not talking about travellers with that unfortunately that you have issues with sometimes with the horse and carts. This is not a rite of passage. This is vandalism of our parks and our nature.
Thank you, Councillor Wilby. I have got Councillor Conyard and then Councillor Kahili.
Thank you, Chair. This is slightly rather an odd one. 3 members who spoke for me all highlighted that they have these issues in their ward. Obviously, Councillors Wilkinson and Wilkinson have highlighted the issues within their ward. I do hear from residents complaints when it happens. Fortunately, it happens a lot less in my ward, but it does happen from time to time. Yet, the powers to actually stop this, we apparently have, if I've understood correctly. I'm not keen to vote for something that is about to put in more paperwork and create more problems for officers in this if it's not going to get the desired result. But I am keen that the member that moved this motion and the officer potentially come to a solution which works for the both of them, so that all of us members on the committee and all of us councillors in the borough can try and put a stop to this continual problem, because it is a problem. Residents really do not like it. They complain, and it is, as Councillor Wilby said, vandalism quite often. Thank you.
Councillor Kahili.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions really. Is there any scope for it to be extended to e-scooters? I'm just thinking we've had a fatality in my ward just last year, a very young lad. I think he was 15, 16. And the other, could you just clarify where these things can be used legally? Because I think that's something we all need to understand. Thank you.
It's not in the proposal that's been made to include e-scooters, but from a practical point of view, yes, it could be extended. Again, there's already legislation that exists against e-scooters, so, and you can't create an offence with a PSPO that already exists. So there would be an ultra vires kind of issue that we would have to consider. So in law, if you create an offence that already exists or you act beyond the powers you already have, it's called ultra vires. So you're doing too much with what you already have. So we already have powers to deal with this. It's just, I think what the council is asking us to do is to do them more, which I accept we probably can, with a little bit more collaborative working with the ward members and with the other ward members. Nuisance bikes comes up on, we have 7 clusters, and I think nuisance bikes features on 5. And probably the only one that it doesn't feature on is the town centre. And probably if I asked those cluster members, they would probably say that they do occasionally have an issue with it, because I've seen them in the town centre as well. And I have to make it clear, I'm not a fan of off-road bikes, and I'm absolutely a fan of dealing with this problem. It's just finding the right tool to deal with it. The second question, sorry.
Where, just to clarify, where these bikes, these quads, can be used legally.
So if you've got a private piece of land that has planning permission that allows them to be used, then it can be used on that. There are restrictions around that. Often those sites are restricted to a number of events per year, and obviously they're chargeable. There are also certain areas like Breadhurst Woods, where if you have a license and a permission from the highway, from KCC, I believe it is, you can use that. And they often have legalised off-road biking riders on those pathways. The challenge we all face, and I absolutely accept it as a challenge, is the illegal people and the underage riders who I wouldn't want to issue a £100 fixed penalty notice to.
I've got Councillor Dawes, then I will give Councillor Wilkinson her right of reply as I see no other people indicating.
As all my colleagues, I highlighted, there's been a massive problems in our ward, like everybody else. There has been a several amounts of vandalism where we had to replace gates after gates after gates, and they've been chainsawing through absolutely everything. So I'm in favour of what's been proposed if that's going to help the police to do their work.
Just before I call Councillor Wilkinson for the right to reply, I will make one comment, and Councillor Wilkinson knows what I'm going to say because she was with me. Myself and Councillor Wilkinson, when the Mangrabbit rec, as you know, the recreation ground, when it was part of Shepway North, we always go and do our regular walk around and check, and actually caught the parent come to pick her children up with their dirt bikes that she'd helpfully dropped off. So this is very much an issue. It isn't just about the people who are riding them, it's about the parents who are basically enabling their children to do this, and that's where the issue lies. Councillor Wilkinson, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. In reply to Councillor Conyard's comment about whether it's already included in the Road Traffic Act, this PSPO has got additional offences that will be added on for revving, stunts, etc., that aren't included in the Road Traffic Act. In relating to Martin's comments about not being able to catch people on dirt bikes, the aim of this PSPO is to act as a deterrent and show a strong message and good signage to kind of deter the people from doing it in the first place. And I think we really need this because at the moment, nothing seems to be working. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. So the preferred option, as outlined, and I've seen no other options made at this point, is that a report with options based on the discussion by Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee. Please, someone change the name of this committee, it's way too long. And any other additional information from officers be taken to Cabinet, which I think is a sensible solution for all concerned. Do we have agreement for that proposal? Agreed? Thank you very much, and thank you, Martin, for your very full response on all the questions. So the next item, which is the one you've all been waiting for, is the quarter financial update and performance monitoring, which will be introduced by Councillor Wales, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, and we have Adrian Lovegrove and Carly Benville, who is virtually here. I'm waving at you, Carly, in case you can't see. And please feel free, after hearing what the Cabinet Member has to say and any questions you may have to the Cabinet Member or to officers. So over to you, Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Chair. I know this is the bit you've all been waiting for. I have to say too that this pack's name is the shortest of the three, so you've drawn the short straw. So the Finance and Performance Monitoring Report sets out the position to the end of 23-24, and therefore covers the final year of the previous administration. So it's quite an interesting position to be in to introduce it, but thank you to the opposition. There are now 3 packs rather than 4, and with different areas of responsibility, and what the officers have done is move things around to get them into the relevant pack area. So this covers housing and community cohesion. So the overall budget position of the financial year was an underspend of £22,000, which is a fairly neat achievement for any council these days. And there are obviously various over and underspends within this. The outturn for this financial year for this pack was an overspend of 1.178 million, and the details of that are on page 21. And the overspend, most notably on this, is 971,000 for temporary accommodation. This is something which is not really within the council's control. It is a sort of a demand-led service, and it needs to be dealt with. And the budget was suitably increased for this financial year. On the capital expenditure side, it has lagged a bit behind projections. That's on page 23. And this is mainly because of slippage on the council's housing programme of around 13.18 million, compared to out of a budget of 39.438. This unspent budget will be carried forward and utilised in future years, and will be reprofiled and moved down the line, because we don't want to store up more problems of more underspends in future years. On the performance indicators, Appendix 2 shows performance against key performance indicators. Part A is the position for quarter 4 and Part B for the year as a whole, with a quarterly breakdown where that exists. The usual red, amber and green metrics on the frameworks, and arrows up and down and static are the usual things you'd expect to see on KPIs with a target. And where targets not been met, you would have seen the explanation is there from the officers in question. 60%, that's 3 out of 5 of the targetable quarterly KPIs achieved their quarter 4 targets. Highlights include high performance in the number of affordable homes delivered in the period, 70 against a target of 50, and a plateau in the number of households in temporary accommodation. It's really, we can't really take credit for that because it's just what happened, but it's a hopeful trend after a continuous upward trend, and we'll be hoping that that doesn't continue to start to rise again. On the annual performance summary, 2 of the 5 KPIs achieved their target, but 3 of them missed their target, but within a 10% tolerance, and none of them missed by more than 10%. Obviously, budgeting and accounting is not really an exact art. You'd think numbers would just add up and that would be that, but it's more of a science than an art. It's not the case. And there's comments there from the head of service to summarise the housing team's performance throughout the year. Highlights of this include the number of households prevented or relieved from becoming homeless, which is 575 against a target of 500. It's not to say there aren't an awful lot more that could be helped, but we have to start somewhere. And high performance in the number of private sector homes being improved because of interventions in our housing standards team, as 199 against a target of 180. What is quite effective has been the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and the report there in Appendix 3 looks to have been quite effective, and congratulations to all those involved. There are no decisions on this paper, and you're recommended to note the various contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Have I got anyone that wishes to ask any questions or speak on this? Councillor Wilby.
Yeah, just out of the capital programme, 1,000 affordable homes, the housing programme expenditure, how many homes have actually built or bought out of that budget so far? Because obviously that was a goal of previous councils.
Just going to refresh my memory. I believe it's about 180. We do have more on the blocks, as you will be aware, as Chair of Planning, the Maidstone East development will bring another 180 or so onto the market.
And then the flood action plan. Obviously, we are flooding quite a lot within Maidstone, and we have a budget of 618,000, and we spent 6 on that flooding plan. That seems a bit of an underspent truth so far, doesn't it? And that flooding is a big issue for most of our wards, especially in the more rural areas. So can I just have some feedback on why we haven't actually progressed with that?
So a lot of that is, in terms of the housing bit, is the large element of the capital programme, and that's obviously where we've talked about it slipping. A lot of that is due to part with actually developing a program to deliver the 1,000. So obviously it was 3 or 4 years ago it sort of started, and obviously they're developing that program to do that. So a bit like Maidstone East, you find it, have to go through planning and so forth and so forth. So the capital program we've got actually goes slightly more over 10 years to deliver that 1,000. So, but obviously in the future years, we are still unsure of what those schemes will be. I think the key bit about that is now the local plan's been agreed. That sort of settled the market down, we think, so that the builders are going to be around, and therefore they're actually potentially more going to also be available to support the building. So as we've touched on, it's certainly always being reviewed. It gets reviewed every quarter internally, and obviously we'll try and give you the update as part of this going forward. So we'll be able to bring a certain amount of information here. Some obviously maybe commercial, depending on which bits we're trying to build or buy at the time. But yeah, we're happy to share what we can.
Thank you. Councillor Fort.
Just a query on page 20. We obviously do have a problem in Maidstone with homelessness. But there's a number of items here which I think all relate to homelessness. So we've got the temporary accommodation, we've got homelessness prevention. I'd like to know what that is. Then we've got sundry temporary accommodation. There's the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we've got homelessness outreach. I think we need to put all those figures together so that we get a true picture. But what is homelessness prevention?
Mr. Littlemore, would you like to come up and answer that question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, homelessness prevention is around literally that. The Homelessness Prevention Act requires that we try to prevent homelessness in a 56-day period. So we work with applicants, with their landlords or the families that are looking to evict them to try and prevent that from happening. So it might be about negotiating with the landlord or the families to assist the household in a managed way rather than it being literally being thrown out. The reason why we separate out that from the outreach services because they're funded differently. They're two different grants that come from government. So we have a compact with the government to deliver those particular pieces of work. We can't move the money from one area across to another because of the agreements that we have to enter into with the government. I hope that helps explain the position.
Happy with that answer, Councillor Fort?
So this is staffing really, is it?
In part, some of it can be where we use funds to either assist with rent arrears or with mortgage debts, those sorts of things to help enable somebody to remain in their accommodation. So it can be a whole range of measures, but mainly the costs are staffing. Thank you.
And why aren't the sundry temporary accommodation and the others all put in the one homeless temporary accommodation? You've got 5. 1, 2, yeah, 5.
I think when we originally set up how we were accounting for accommodation, because we were acquiring ad hoc properties for temporary accommodation, so they were dotted around different streets, and that it was felt the best way to be able to analyse what we were spending on each of those properties was to do it by bedroom size. So that's why it was broken down in that way. Once we open the housing revenue account, we might want to revisit that at that point to do it differently. But at the moment, it does enable us to keep a good check on what we're spending in sort of each area.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes?
I had a questions regarding the flooding money, although I could have made a smaller comments about the prevention of homelessness, because I happen to work for charities that deal with homelessness and people in crisis, Madam, making a difference to Maidstone. And it's a lot more expensive, if I understand, for the councils to place people in temporary accommodation rather than trying to help them to remain within their home and resettle them in another area. That's why they're in two different budgets. But my questions was, I haven't quite fully understand the answers given about the flooding money. Maybe because my understanding is the flooding money budget. Is it for the maintenance of the drains to avoid the flooding, or is that got nothing to do with it? Because you talked about capital and that kind of lost me there.
Can I just clarify? Are you talking about the flood action plan there? Yes, fine.
Page 22.
Yeah. So the issue with the flood action plan is a lot of that work actually happens outside of our land and actually isn't directed by us. So the way that it's set up with the drainage board who coordinate all that work, we are working with them to try and get the work agreed. We've put, I understand it, we've put some offers forward of things we would like to be done, but it has to go through their governance process to get approved and get done, which is why it's taking quite a long time to get that agreement to happen. So sadly, it's not all in our control.
Thank you. That clarified my question. It's just waiting. The budget is there. Once it's agreed, it would be spent. Thank you very much.
Right, I see no other hands up for questions. So do we, as per, and it's going to tell me on my idiot's guide for chairs, which is me, page 12, the 4 recommendations, which basically do you note each bit of the report. So it's the revenue position, the capital position, the performance position, and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund update attached as Appendix 3. So do you note all those reports? Agreed? Thank you very much. And now we come to item 13, which again is to be introduced by Councillor Wales, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, and also present will be Philip Morris, Head of New Business and Developments. Councillor Wales.
Chair, are we allowed a comfort break before the next item?
You can quickly pop out the loo if you want, yes. So while everyone's getting settled, it is pages 49 on your agenda. Councillor Wales.
I'll carry on. Okay, thanks. This item and its exempt papers, which we need to be rather careful mentioning in public with the recording on, relates to the proposed acquisition of a town centre brownfield site, which delivers 23 units with easy access to local transport links and amenities. The site has outline planning permission granted in 2015. We bought the site with the permission as part of a wider permission to deliver 65 homes over 3 phases. This phase is phase 2. It has no requirement for provision of affordable homes and consists of 19 houses and 4 one-bed maisonettes. The report covers the acquisition on the basis of delivering 19 homes as affordable rent and the 4 maisonettes as market rent. The issue at the moment is that the 4 maisonettes are currently slightly under the required size to qualify for grant funding. However, post-acquisition of the site, officers will look to increase the size of the maisonettes, if possible, to deliver all units as affordable rent. I'm quite keen that we should not be delivering some substandard homes, that we should make sure that homes we deliver as an exemplar landlord or builder are fit for the purpose. The issue may be if they make them larger or reduce one, then the return on the project may become less viable. There's at least 1 parking space per property, with a number of houses being provided with electric vehicle charging points. So there may be scope within the parking areas to reduce perhaps 1 or 2 to get these flats up to these maisonettes up to the right size. Homes England grant funding will be applied for post-acquisition, as is the standard case, to assist in the cost of delivering these homes as affordable housing, for which we have a great need. Phase 3, which is the next phase, of 24 apartments, was acquired by Maidstone Borough Council in 2023 and is on site, with the units being delivered as social rent. For some reason, 3 came before 2. Don't ask me why. The proposed acquisition provides Maidstone Borough Council with a good opportunity to acquire a number of houses with parking in a town centre location and provide high quality living accommodation, and I commend it to members.
Councillor Wales has just outlined the proposals that are in the papers. Does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions pertaining to the yellow papers, we will have to go into closed session. So I need you to be clear about what you're asking the questions on. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Wilby, is it on the white papers or the yellow papers?
It's just something that Councillor Wells said about the EV charging points. You mentioned about the EV charging points. You said that some will have them. As Councillor Cleek will know, planning, we generally ask that all homes now have electrical charging points, not some, or at least be electrical charging point ready. So in the proposal, that position, it'd be nice if we could have that as well. Obviously, I haven't read all the yellow papers yet, as such, but I would also just make sure that we're doing the PV, all the stuff we ask of our developers, we are doing the same.
Thank you, Councillor. 13 of the houses have got EV charging points where they have a parking space outside the front of them. Where they don't have a parking space outside, then there will be EV structure will be laid there so they can look to connect once that's built out. So hopefully all of the units will have EV charging point access.
And the PV and the environment enhancements we ask from our developers, are we building all that in as well? Because it's embarrassing when our own plans come to committee and they're not as good as what we actually get from the developers.
So this site is obviously, we didn't get the planning on it initially. We're purchasing it with an outline planning application, but there are already a number of reserve matters that have been discharged, but we will be delivering it in line with obviously the current regulations, the PV, the energy requirements as our building control. So they will be delivered to the current requirements.
Before I bring in Councillor Kahili, is there anything else that anyone wants to ask on the white papers, not the appendix? Okay, you want to ask on the yellow papers? Yeah. Yeah, so I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the exempt appendices to item 13, Council House Building Programme, due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that seconded? Is it agreed? Thank you. waiting with bated breath to see what we're going to say. Sorry, I should be a lot more serious, shouldn't I? But to be fair, we've done very well tonight. It's not 8 o'clock yet. Did you not hear my speech? Are we good to go yet? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. We are now at the place where we can look at the recommendations, which are on page 50 and 51. As it's about half a page full, I'm not going to read them all out. So if you are agreed from point 1, 2, 3, 4, are we in agreement? I'll go through each one if you like, but are we all agreed on all the recommendations contained in the report? Agreed. Thank you very much. And now, that's it, the meeting's closed. Thank you very much, everyone. And to Councillor Cox, if you're with us, you didn't miss anything. Thank you very much, everyone.